This is what you deserve." Those were the words I heard as I looked at my fine porcelain plate, now stained with the saliva of Vivian Sterling, my daughter-in-law's mother. 15 people witnessed that moment. 15 pairs of eyes, silently watching as that 6'3" woman, dressed in her pearl-collared Chanel suit, leaned over the mahogany dining table and spat at me as if I were trash. But what truly broke me was not the spit. It was the voice of my son. "Mom, please behave yourself. Don't provoke her. Julian," my Julian, the boy I raised alone, cleaning other people's houses to pay for his college. The man who now looked at me with embarrassment, begging me with his eyes to be quiet, to swallow this humiliation, to not ruin his perfect Thanksgiving dinner. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It hardened. I took out my phone with hands that didn't tremble, typed 3 words, and pressed send. "Execute the plan." Vivian let out a laugh. "Who are you texting, Eleanor?" "Your little sewing circle?" I got up from the table, wiped my lips with the linen napkin, and spoke with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. "My lawyers." What happened next? No one saw it coming. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 55 years old. For a long time, I was the invisible woman, the sacrificing mother, the compliant grandmother, the humble seamstress who always bowed her head. But that night, in front of that imported mahogany table and hand-embroidered tablecloths, I discovered something I had forgotten about myself, that humility doesn't mean letting them destroy you, and that a quiet woman can be preparing the most powerful move of her life. Let me tell you how a simple seamstress ended up sitting at that table, and how that same seamstress taught everyone a lesson they will never forget. 3 years ago, my life was simple, but it was mine. I lived in a small house in a neighborhood in Queens, New York, with a small yard full of purple petunias and a sewing workshop that smelled of clean fabric and Singer machine oil. Every morning, I got up at 6, made my regular coffee with a dash of vanilla, and sat in front of my window to watch the sun light up the geranium pots. My world was small. Yes, but it was honest. I sewed prom dresses, fixed hems, embroidered tablecloths for weddings. My clients were neighborhood ladies, working women like me, who paid me with crumpled bills and always gave me a 6-pack of Diet Coke or a donut. "Ms. Eleanor," they would say affectionately, "you have golden hands." I would smile. I didn't have much, but I had dignity. And I had Julian, my son, my pride, the man who achieved everything I couldn't. Julian studied business administration at New York University, graduated with honors, got a job at a real estate firm in Manhattan, and started climbing the ladder until he became a regional director. I watched him grow, and my chest filled with a joy that hurt. Because every suit he wore, every important meeting he attended, every achievement he celebrated, I knew how much it had cost. How many early mornings washing other people's clothes? How many knees on the ground mopping offices? How many nights sewing until my fingers bled just to pay for one more semester? But it was worth it. Everything was worth it. Or so I believed. The day Julian introduced me to Charlotte, I knew something had changed. It was a Sunday in October. They came to my house without warning. I was in the yard watering the plants in my old apron and my hair pulled back in a messy braid. "Mom," Julian said with a nervous smile, "I want to introduce you to someone." Charlotte Sterling was beautiful. There was no doubt about that. Tall, thin, with that kind of polished beauty that only comes with money. Straight mahogany-coloured hair, perfect nails, clothes that probably cost more than my rent for 3 months. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Hayes," she said with a correct but cold smile, barely extending the tips of her fingers. "The pleasure is all mine, dear," I replied, wiping my hands on my apron. "Come in. I'll make some coffee." Charlotte looked at Julian. A quick, almost imperceptible glance. But I saw it. It was a look that said, "Seriously, your mother lives here." We sat in my small living room. I served regular coffee in mismatched mugs. Charlotte took hers carefully, as if she feared catching poverty. "Mum," Julian said, taking Charlotte's hand. "We have news. We're getting married." My heart skipped a beat. Joy. Fear. Something in between. "Oh, son, how wonderful," I said, getting up to hug him. "Charlotte, welcome to the family." She smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. Julian has told me a lot about you. About your job." The way she said "your job" pierced me like a cold needle. "I'm a seamstress," I said with my chin up, "and very proud to be one." "Of course," Charlotte replied with that polite smile. "It's a humble profession." Julian didn't say anything. He just squeezed Charlotte's hand and changed the subject. That night after they left, I sat in front of my sewing machine and cried without knowing exactly why. Perhaps because for the first time in my life, I felt small. 2 weeks later, I was invited to meet Charlotte's family. The Sterling's house was in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. It wasn't a house. It was a mansion. Electric gate. Gardens that looked like they were from a magazine. A fountain at the entrance with marble cherubs. I rang the doorbell with sweaty hands holding a carrot cake I had baked since 5 that morning. A uniformed employee opened the door. "Mrs. Hayes," he said. "Please come in. They are waiting for you on the terrace." I walked through marble hallways, past walls with enormous paintings and furniture I had only seen in magazines. My old shoes squeaked against the floor, and I wanted to disappear. On the terrace, under a pergola covered with vines, was the entire family. Vivian Sterling, the matriarch, sat like a queen in a white wicker armchair. Her husband, Nestor, a corpulent man with a gold watch. 2 more daughters with their husbands. And Charlotte radiant next to Julian. "Mum." Julian stood up smiling. "This is my mum, Eleanor." "How lovely." "Mrs. Hayes," Vivian said without getting up, examining me from head to toe. "Please have a seat." I sat on the edge of the sofa with my cake in my lap. "I brought a little dessert," I said shyly. "A carrot cake. It's my specialty." Vivian looked at the cake as if I had offered her poison. What a thoughtful gesture. "Daniela," She called to an employee. "Take this to the kitchen." The cake disappeared. We never saw it again. For 2 hours, I listened to the Sterling family talk about things I didn't understand. Trips to Europe, investments, property, wine brands I didn't even know how to pronounce. No one asked me anything. No one included me in any conversation. I was furniture, an awkward ornament someone had forgotten to remove. When we finally said goodbye, Vivian gave me 2 kisses in the air without really touching me. "Mrs. Hayes," she said with a sharp smile. "How sweet that Julian has such humble roots. It makes him so authentic." On the way back, Julian drove in silence. "Isn't Charlotte's family incredible?" he finally said. I looked out the window. Yes. Son. Incredible. But inside, something had broken. Weeks passed. The wedding was planned. And slowly, I began to notice something that chilled my blood. Julian was changing. He no longer visited on Sundays. He no longer ate my turkey meatloaf with the same joy. He no longer called me mummy, but mom, with a more formal, more distant tone. One day, while we were having coffee in my kitchen, I asked him, "Son, are you ashamed of me?" Julian almost choked. "What are you talking about?" "Mom? Of course not." "Then why do I feel like you're leaving me behind?" He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at his mug. He stirred the spoon in slow circles. "Mom," he finally said, "Charlotte and her family are different. They have certain standards, and I need to fit in there if I want to build a future. And I don't fit into that future. It's not that. It's just that things are complicated sometimes." I got up from the table. I didn't want him to see me cry. "I understand. Son, I understand perfectly. But I didn't understand anything. I only knew that the boy who swore to love me forever now looked at me as if I were a problem he needed to solve. And the worst was yet to come. Sometimes we trust the people we love too much. Sometimes we give everything without asking for anything in return. Have you also felt invisible to someone who should value you? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read them. The wedding was held in June in a garden in Newport, Rhode Island that looked like it was out of a movie. I arrived alone in a navy blue dress that I had sewn myself over 3 weeks. It was elegant, simple, dignified. But when I saw the guests in their designer dresses and their jewels shining under the sun, I felt like an intruder at my own celebration. Vivian Sterling looked spectacular in a champagne-coloured dress and an enormous hat. She greeted me with that cold smile I already knew. "Eleanor, you look lovely. Did you make your dress yourself?" "Yes." "Mrs. Sterling. Oh, how talented. Though, for next time, I can recommend an excellent boutique. You know, for important events." I swallowed the humiliation as if it were bitter medicine. During the ceremony, I cried, but I don't know if I cried from happiness or from fear. I watched my Julian at the altar, so handsome in his tuxedo, looking at Charlotte with those eyes full of love. And I only wanted to feel joy. I wanted to believe that everything would be fine. But something inside me knew I was losing my son. At the reception, they sat me at a table in the back, far from the main table, with Charlotte's distant aunts, who barely spoke to me. From there, I watched Julian laugh with the Sterlings, toast with them, belong to that world I could never touch. When it was time for the mother-son dance, Julian looked for me. I walked toward him with my heart in my throat. "Mom," he whispered as we danced. "Thank you for everything, for every sacrifice. I will never forget it. I know. My love, I just want you to be happy." "I am. Mom. Charlotte is incredible, and her family has opened so many doors for me." I nodded, swallowing the words I really wanted to say. "What about me? I'm important, too." But I kept quiet as always. After the wedding, the months passed in a strange haze. Julian and Charlotte moved into a townhouse in the Upper East Side of Manhattan that the Sterlings gave them as a wedding gift. A 3-story house with a terrace and a view of the park trees. I was still in my little house in Queens, sewing dresses for my clients, waiting for Julian's calls, which became more and more spaced out. One day, 6 months after the wedding, Julian called me, excited. "Mum, I have news. Charlotte is pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." My heart filled with pure, almost childlike joy. "Oh, son, how wonderful. I'm coming over right now." "Wait. Mom, I'll call you later to coordinate. Charlotte is resting. And well, you know how these things are." "Of course. Son, whatever you need." But the call to coordinate never came. Throughout Charlotte's pregnancy, I felt as if I were watching my son's life through glass. Close but unable to touch. Charlotte's Facebook posts showed spectacular baby showers, nursery rooms worthy of a magazine, professional photo shoots, and I sitting in my workshop knitting a baby blanket with my own hands, wondering if my grandson would ever use it. When Finn was born, Julian called me from the hospital. "He's born. Mum. A beautiful boy. His name is Finn Sterling Hayes." I was silent for a second. Sterling Hayes, not Hayes Sterling. Well, Charlotte's family has a tradition. The maternal surname comes first when it's the first male grandchild. Another silent humiliation again. Swallow everything. "That's fine. Son, when can I go meet him?" "Tomorrow afternoon. But only for 1 hour." "Okay. Charlotte needs to rest. And well. Her mom is here helping with everything." The next day, I arrived at the hospital with the blanket I had knitted, a teddy bear, and my heart full of hope. In the private room, surrounded by expensive flowers and elegant balloons, Charlotte was in bed, radiant despite the fatigue. Julian was holding Finn, and next to him, like a territorial guardian, was Vivian Sterling. "Eleanor, I'm glad you came," Julian said. "Look, Mom, your grandson." I approached with tears in my eyes. Finn was perfect. Small, pink, with his eyes closed and his tiny fists clenched. "Can I hold him?" Julian looked at Charlotte. Charlotte looked at Vivian. Vivian nodded as if granting permission. "Of course, Eleanor. But be careful. He is very delicate." As if I hadn't raised a son alone. as if my hands, these hands that worked for years to give Julian a decent life, were now dangerous. I held Finn with a tenderness that hurt. I looked at him. I touched his soft little face. I breathed in that new baby smell that is like pure magic. "I brought you a little blanket," I whispered. "I made it myself with all my love." Vivian approached. She examined the blanket with a critical eye. How charmingly rustic. Although, you know, Eleanor, these hand-knitted fabrics sometimes have fibers that can cause allergies. We'd better put it away and use the organic cotton blankets we've already bought. I felt as if I had been slapped. Julian didn't say anything. Charlotte smiled sadly. But she didn't intervene either. I stayed 20 more minutes. No one offered me a seat. No one included me in the conversation about plans for the baby. The private pediatrician, the nanny they had already hired. When I said goodbye, I hugged Julian. "Son, if you need help with the baby, I can. Don't worry. Mom." Charlotte's mum already has everything organized. She's going to stay with us for the first few weeks. Of course, Vivian would stay. Vivian would be there for the first smiles, the first nights, the first magical moments of her grandson. And I would return to my empty house, to my silent workshop, to be the second-class grandmother. In the taxi ride back, I cried uncontrollably. The driver asked me if I was okay. I told him yes, that I had just met my grandson, that they were tears of happiness. I lied. The following months were a slow, silent ordeal. I called Julian to ask about Finn. He answered with short messages. "Everything fine. Mum. I'll call you later." But later almost never came. On Facebook, I saw photos of Finn all the time in Vivian's arms in their huge house at Sterling family parties where I was never invited. One Saturday afternoon, I gathered my courage and went to Julian's house without warning. I rang the doorbell. An employee opened. "I'm looking for my son, Julian Hayes. Do you have an appointment?" "Ma'am, an appointment? Did I need an appointment to see my own son?" "No, but I am his mother." "One moment." I waited at the door like a street vendor. Finally, Charlotte appeared with Finn in her arms. "Eleanor, what a surprise. You should have called. I wanted to see my grandson." "Is Julian here? He went golfing with my dad. But come in just for a little while. Finn has a very strict nap routine." I entered that house that smelled of expensive candles and French perfume. I sat on the edge of the sofa like an unwanted visitor. I held Finn for 15 minutes. Charlotte watched me like a hawk, correcting how I held him, how I talked to him, how everything. "Oh, Eleanor, not so close to your face. He could catch something. I'm not sick." "Charlotte, I know. But you never know. My mum says it's better to be cautious." "Your mum. Always. Your mum." When I left that house, I knew that something inside me was dying. It wasn't just sadness. It was resignation. The terrible acceptance that I had lost my place in my son's life. That night, sitting in my workshop, I looked at my sewing machine, that antique Singer that my mother had bequeathed to me. That machine that had fed Julian, that had paid for his school, his university, his dreams. And I wondered if it had all been worth it. If raising a son alone, sacrificing everything, breaking my back, working only for him to treat me like a nuisance now, if that was the destiny I deserved. I cried until I fell asleep on the workbench, my hands resting on the cold machine, feeling that my life no longer had meaning. But life, as always, had other plans. While I was silently giving up, while I was accepting my role as the invisible mother, the second-rate grandmother, something was about to happen that would change everything forever. Sometimes when you hit rock bottom, when you have no strength left to keep swimming, life sends you a signal, a push, a reason to wake up. And my signal was about to arrive. The signal arrived 3 months later in the form of an unexpected call. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sewing the first communion dress for Mrs. Chavez's granddaughter when my phone rang. An unknown number. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. Yes. Speaking. This is Counselor Charles Martin from Martin & Associates law firm. I need to see you urgently. It concerns a very delicate family matter. My heart skipped a beat. I thought of Julian, of Finn, of some terrible accident. What happened? Is my son okay? Your son is perfectly fine. But I need to speak with you in person. Can you come to my office tomorrow? The next day, I arrived at a corporate building in Midtown Manhattan. Councillor Martin's offices were on the 22nd floor. Everything was glass, steel, and impressive views of the city. The councillor was a man in his 60s with glasses and an impeccable suit. He received me with seriousness. Mrs. Hayes, thank you for coming. What I am about to tell you is uncomfortable, but you have the right to know. I sat down with my hands tightly clasped over my purse. I was the attorney for your late husband, Edward Hayes. I froze. No one mentioned Edward. No one talked about the man who had abandoned us when Julian was 2 years old. Edward passed away 6 months ago in Miami, Florida. I felt nothing, neither sadness nor relief, just a strange emptiness. I'm sorry, I said out of politeness. Ma'am, Edward changed a lot in his final years. He regretted leaving you. He built a successful import and export business. And in his will, he left everything in the name of his son, Julian, and his grandson, Finn. The world stopped. As in, Robert inherited property, bank accounts, investments. We're talking about approximately $4 million. $4 million. And Julian knows? Yes. Mom. He came in 5 months ago to sign all the papers. He and his wife. 5 months. Julian had known for 5 months and never told me. Why are you telling me this? The counsellor sighed. Because in the will, George left a letter for you. He asked for forgiveness for all the harm he caused you, and he specifically asked Julian to take care of you, never to abandon you as he did. He handed me a yellowish envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. Edward's handwriting was almost illegible, trembling like an old sick man's. A note on the story. If this incredible story of betrayal and realization resonates with you, Please subscribe to the channel and share the video. Your support helps me grow and motivates me to bring you more powerful stories. Eleanor, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I left you alone with our son and took my cowardice to another city. I built a new life, but I was never happy. I always carried the guilt of having destroyed you. I left everything to Julian because you raised him alone with your effort, with your love. But I beg him never to abandon you as I did. That he take care of you. That he give you the place you deserve. Forgive me, Eleanor, although I know I can't ask that of you. Edward. Tears fell onto the paper, staining the old ink. Mrs. Hayes, the counsellor continued. The reason I called you is because Julian asked me for absolute discretion. He didn't want you to know anything about the inheritance. In fact, he signed specific documents to prevent me from contacting you. I felt as if cold water had been thrown on me. My son deliberately hid this from me. Yes, Mum, and there's something else you should know. He took some papers out of a folder. Julian and his wife have been making significant purchases in recent months, a country house in the Hamptons valued at $800,000, a brand new BMW, shares in his father-in-law's company. And they made a donation of $100,000 to a foundation that Mrs. Vivian Sterling presides over. Each word was a stab. But they have never offered you assistance, financial or otherwise. I got up from the chair because I felt like I was suffocating. Why are you telling me all this? Counselor? Because my job is to execute the will of my clients. And Edward's will was that, he repented and that his son fulfill his last request. Julian signed confidentiality papers with me, but I didn't sign anything regarding you. Legally, I can inform you. And what do you expect me to do with this information? The counsellor looked at me with something that resembled compassion. That is up to you, Mrs. Hayes. But I thought you deserved to know the truth. I left that office like a sleepwalker. I rode down the 22 floors in the elevator without seeing anything, without hearing anything. Only the echo of a truth that was splitting me in two. Julian had inherited $4 million and never told me, while I kept sewing until dawn to pay my rent, to buy my groceries, to save money for Finn's little gifts that never reached his hands. My son had millions that his absent father had left him with a single condition, that he take care of me, and he chose to hide it from me. I walked down Midtown Manhattan aimlessly through the midday crowd, feeling that I didn't know the man my son had become. When did it happen? At what moment did the boy who cried in my arms, who promised he would always love me, who said, "When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big house," Mummy, transform into this man who erased me from his life while spending fortunes to impress people who were worth nothing? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the heavy silence of my empty house. The next day, I did something I had never done. I actually looked through Charlotte's Facebook, not just glancing over it. And there it all was. Photos in the Hamptons in a beautiful wooden house with a lake. Our little vacation home, the caption said. The new BMW parked in front of their house. My husband spoilt me with heart emojis. Photos of a charity gala. Charlotte and Julian next to Vivian. Extremely elegant. proud to support the Sterling Hope Foundation. And photos of Finn. Lots of photos of my grandson with expensive toys. Designer clothes in his room that looked straight out of a catalogue. But no photo of me. Not a single mention that this child had another grandmother. I closed the laptop and something inside me, something that had been dormant for years, began to wake up. It wasn't rage yet. It was something colder, more calculated. It was clarity. I picked up the phone and called Julian. Hello. Mom. Everything okay? Son, I need to talk to you. It's important. Oh. Mom. I'm busy. Can it be another day? No. Julian. I need to see you today. Something in my tone must have alerted him because he accepted. All right. I'll stop by your house tonight. But he didn't come alone. He arrived with Charlotte. I received them with coffee. We sat in my small living room, that space that now seemed so tiny compared to their mansions. Son, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Your father passed away a few months ago, didn't he? Julian's face lost all colour. Charlotte looked at him alarmed. How? How did you know? That doesn't matter. Is it true? Julian swallowed hard. Yes. Mom. He passed away. But I didn't want to tell you because I thought it would just hurt you to remember him. And he left you an inheritance. Silence. A silence so heavy it seemed to crush the air in the room. Mom. Yes or no? Julian? Yes. He finally admitted, his voice cracking. He left us some resources. Some resources. $4 million were some resources. And why did you never tell me? Because I didn't want you to feel bad. Dad abandoned us. Mom, you were the one who raised me. I didn't want you to think that I now value his money more than everything you did for me. He sounded almost convincing. Almost. And what about your father's request? The letter where he asked you to take care of me? Julian turned even paler. Charlotte intervened for the first time. Eleanor, I think you're misunderstanding things. Julian loves you. We all love you. But his father's inheritance is a private matter for our family. I am his family, I said with a calm I didn't feel. What I meant to say is our nuclear family. Julian, me, and Finn. We didn't want to involve you in complicated financial matters. Involve me? I'm his mother. Julian got up nervous. Mum, I know this looks bad, but I promise I've always thought about you. In fact, Charlotte and I were planning to help you renovate your house, buy you a better car. When? In 5 more years. In 10. It's not fair. Mum, we're building our wealth. We have to think about Finn's future. In smart investments. And is the Hamptons house a smart investment? The BMW? The $100,000 for your mother-in-law's foundation? Julian was speechless. Charlotte stood up, offended. I don't know who gave you that information. Eleanor. But it is very inappropriate for you to be investigating our finances. Inappropriate is forgetting the mother who broke her back to give her son a decent life. Julian approached, trying to take my hands. Mom, please. Let's not fight. You are important to me. You always will be. I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes I had known since he was born, that I had seen cry, laugh, dream, and I recognized nothing in them. I want you to leave, I said firmly. Mom, please leave my house. I need to be alone. They left. Julian tried to hug me at the door, but I stepped aside. When I closed the door, I leaned against it and took a deep breath. I didn't cry. For the first time in months, I didn't cry because something had changed in me that night. Something fundamental. I had stopped being the silent victim, the self-sacrificing mother who forgave everything. And although I still didn't know what I would do, although I still didn't have a plan, I knew I was no longer going to keep accepting crumbs of love at the table of my own life. The war hadn't started yet, but I had just put on the uniform. The following weeks were strange. On the outside, everything was the same. I sewed my dresses, attended to my clients, watered my plants every morning, but inside something had changed forever. It was as if I had been asleep for years and had finally opened my eyes. Julian called me occasionally with that voice laden with guilt, asking me how I was. I responded with monosyllables. Fine. Son. Busy. I didn't give him the pleasure of hearing me beg for his attention. One afternoon, while I was drinking coffee in my kitchen, my neighbour, Mrs. Olson, knocked on the door. Eleanor, I've come to ask you a huge favour. My niece is getting married in 2 months and needs a dress. But not just any dress. Something special. Elegant. The kind you know how to make. What's her budget? Well, she works at a bank. She earns well. She can pay what's fair. Something clicked in my head. How much is earns well? Linda, Mrs. Olson lowered her voice as if it were a secret. Like $30,000 a year. To her, your work is gold. Eleanor. I told her you charge cheap, but that you're the best. $30,000 a year. I charged $200 for a handmade wedding dress with embroidery that took me weeks. $200. That was barely enough for me to survive. Why did I charge so little? Because I always believed I didn't deserve more. Because I always believed that my work, like my life, it should be humble. Tell your niece to come, I told Mrs. Olson. But my prices have changed now. A handmade wedding dress with custom embroidery costs $1,500. If she wants something more elaborate, $2,000, Mrs. Olson almost choked on her coffee. Oh, Eleanor, isn't that a lot? It's fair. Linda, it's what my work is worth. 3 days later, Mrs. Olson's niece came to my workshop. A pretty nervous girl about 25 years old. I showed her my portfolio, photos of dresses I had made over the years. Her eyes lit up. Mrs. Eleanor, your work is beautiful. It looks like it came from an expensive boutique. Why? It is from an expensive boutique. I replied with newfound confidence. Only I'm the owner of my own boutique. She accepted the price without haggling. That night, as I made coffee, I smiled for the first time in weeks. I had discovered something simple, yet powerful. I was worth more than they had made me believe. The next day, I called all my old clients. I informed them that my prices had changed. Some were annoyed and didn't return. But others, the ones who truly valued my work, accepted without a problem. In 1 month, I had tripled my income. I wasn't a millionaire like Julian, but I was no longer the woman begging for crumbs. One Saturday morning, Julian showed up at my house without warning. He had Finn with him. "Mom, I thought you'd like to spend time with your grandson." Charlotte went shopping with her mom. Of course. I was the emergency babysitter when Vivian wasn't available. But I picked up Finn and my heart melted. He was already 1 year and 6 months old. He was walking, stumbling. He was babbling words. He was perfect. "Hello, my love," I said to him. "Do you remember your grandma, Eleanor?" Finn looked at me with curiosity. Julian looked uncomfortable. "Honestly, Mom, he hasn't spent much time with you. Charlotte says it's important for him to have stable routines and Laura's house is more stable than mine." Julian didn't answer. We spent the morning together. I gave Finn cookies I had baked. We played in the yard. I showed him the petunias. He laughed with that pure laugh of children who don't yet know the cruelty of the world. When Julian came to pick him up, Finn cried when saying goodbye. That broke me and healed me at the same time. "Come back soon, my darling," I whispered to him. "Your grandma will always love you." Julian looked at me with something that resembled regret. "Mom, I know things have been weird between us, but I want to fix it." "Really? How, Julian? How are you going to fix everything you've broken?" "I don't know, but I'll try. I promise you." Promises. Always promises. Son, I no longer need your promises. I need action. Respect. A real place in your life and in my grandson's life. You'll have it. Mom, I swear. He left with Finn and I stayed in my house. More alone than ever, but also stronger. That night, I did something I had never done. I searched the internet for inheritance lawyers knew why. Prolonged cohabitation with hostile people. You want surveillance? Any method that documents their behavior legally. Cameras in the common areas of your own home. Legal. Living room. Kitchen. Hallways. Audio and video. Cloud backup. Access from your phone. She gave me a quote. $5,000 upfront retainer plus hourly fees. I signed the contract without hesitation. The money was worthless compared to the truth. "I'll need access on Tuesday," she said. "Could you get them out for a couple of hours?" "I'll arrange it." On Tuesday morning, during breakfast, I casually mentioned, "I need some things from that specialty market in Coral Gables. Would you mind picking them up? Maybe we can grab lunch together." I gave them a detailed list. Things from a store 30 minutes away. They left at 10. I texted Veronica. She arrived 15 minutes later with equipment cases. Cameras were placed on a living room bookshelf. In a kitchen clock above the table. and in a hallway smoke detector. Small, invisible, recording everything. 90 minutes later, installation complete. Everything completely normal, she stated. Don't let them know you're watching. The best evidence comes when they feel safe. That night, I sat in my study with headphones on, watching the day's recordings. Their return from the errand. The conversation in the kitchen as they unpacked groceries. He's too quiet, Elena said, her voice tight with worry. It's suspicious. We need another approach. Julian leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The direct hit didn't work. Time for the indirect hit. I saved the file, dated it, and labeled it Evidence Log Entry 1. The following days allowed me to build my case. February 28th. Julian discussed contingency plans. March 1st. Elena worried that I was acting strangely. March 2nd. They looked up lawyers to challenge my mental competency. March 3rd. Julian's search history showed declarations of parental incapacity. Every conversation was documented, saved, and organized into folders by topic. I watched them conspire against me with the methodical patience of someone building a legal case brick by brick. Veronica sent weekly reports, their social media activity, online purchases, public record searches, the digital trail of people preparing for war. On March 4th, I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. At breakfast, I rubbed my temples. I've been feeling so tired lately. Their heads snapped up like bloodhounds on a scent. That night at dinner, I feigned forgetting where I had left my reading glasses. I've been very forgetful. Elena leaned forward, feigning concern. Maybe you should see a doctor. Dad. It's normal at your age, Julian added casually, but it's definitely worth checking out. I nodded, playing the confused old man. Later, reviewing the recording, I saw them celebrate my confession as if it were a gift. On the night of March 18th, after 3 weeks of evidence, dozens of conversations, and hundreds of hours of recording, I opened my phone and found Harrison Cole's number. Tomorrow, we would build a strategy. It was time to move from documentation to action. The articles appeared on March 5th. I found them scattered on the kitchen counter that morning. Printed pages about cognitive decline, the early symptoms of dementia, and the importance of medical evaluation for seniors. Elena was by the coffee maker watching my reaction. I found this online. I thought it might be helpful to understand what's been happening with you. I picked up the first article and skimmed it with appropriate confusion. I suppose reading wouldn't hurt. Knowledge is power, Julian added from the doorway. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I took the articles to my study, photographed each page, and filed them as evidence. Psychological manipulation documented. They were constructing a narrative. The confused old man who needed intervention, who couldn't be trusted to handle his own affairs. Over the next 3 days, more articles appeared. Residences for people with dementia. The importance of power of attorney. Financial management for those experiencing cognitive difficulties. Each one was carefully placed where I would find it. Each one was photographed and filed. On March 8th, the surveillance cameras caught them in the living room, believing they were alone. "We need an expert opinion," Julian said. "Someone who can evaluate him professionally." "A psychologist?" Elena's voice held equal parts hope and guilt. "I know someone. Dr. Elias Thorne, a clinical psychologist specializing in elderly cognition. We set up a casual lunch. I introduce them. Elias makes observations. Will he do it ethically? Will he be objective? If your father shows symptoms, Elias documents them. If not," Julian shrugged, "then we'll know for sure." I watched this conversation 3 times, taking notes. The tension was escalating. They were seeking external validation for their version of events. On March 10th, I met Julian for lunch at a cafe in Coconut Grove. He had suggested it that morning so we can get to know each other better without the stress of work. And I accepted with appropriate gratitude. Dr. Elias Thorne joined us 15 minutes in. "Hey, this is my friend Elias." I mentioned him. The psychologist. We shook hands. Elias, about 40-something. Professional demeanor. Cautious eyes. "Julian told me about you. Successful sale. Congratulations." We talked for an hour. My performance was impeccable. I occasionally searched for words, asked Elias to repeat questions, and commented on my forgetfulness. I didn't exaggerate, just a hint of confusion. Elias maintained professional distance, but I caught him watching me, evaluating, cataloguing. "It was a pleasure meeting you," Elias said as lunch ended, handing me his card. "If you ever want to discuss professional topics, I'm available." I put the card in my pocket. Evidence, not service. That night, the surveillance cameras recorded Julian calling Elias from the living room. The speakerphone on. "What did you think?" Julian asked impatiently. "He's 63. Some age-appropriate variation in memory isn't unusual." Elias's voice was carefully neutral. "I can't make clinical assessments based on an informal lunch conversation. But if there were genuine concerns, I could evaluate him formally, with his consent." "Yes. But Julian, I'm not comfortable being part of this. If you have legitimate concerns about his well-being, there are proper channels." "Sure. I'm just exploring options." After hanging up, Julian's face darkened. "We'll find someone else." I saved that recording with particular satisfaction. Even when they tried to corrupt professionals, ethics intervened. From March 12th to 17th, I continued my performance. Small errors, confusion, repeated questions. On the 15th, at breakfast, I asked Eleanor about the plans we had discussed the night before, feigning forgetfulness. Her eyes lit up with excitement, barely concealed. The surveillance cameras recorded everything. Their conversations about my decline. Julian researching commitment procedures. Elena worrying that things were moving too slowly. On March 18th, I adjusted my strategy. At dinner, I casually commented that I had been thinking about updating my will. Julian suggested it given the business sale. I want to make sure everything is in order. A dead silence fell. Then Elena, trying to sound nonchalant. That's responsible. Dad. When are you meeting with him? He'll be preparing the documents soon. Making sure you're well taken care of. I left the words hanging in the air. Bait in a trap. After dinner, I retreated to my study. The surveillance cameras recorded them in the kitchen. They spoke in low voices, but the microphone caught everything. He mentioned the will, Elena said, barely containing her hope. That doesn't mean he's changing it in our favor. Julian's voice held a warning. It could be the opposite. But if he really is confused, if we document that he's not competent when making changes, then we challenge them later. Either way, we need more evidence of his decline. Real evidence, not just observations. They talked for 40 minutes, planning how to document my supposed incompetence. Video, everything. Record strange behavior. Build a case for incapacity that would invalidate any legal change against their interests. I watched them celebrate their cleverness, pouring wine and toasting to progress. They thought they were winning. I closed the laptop, opened my phone, and searched for Harrison Cole's number. 3 weeks of recordings, conversations, plans, attempts at manipulation, psychological warfare, all captured with perfect digital clarity. Tomorrow, we would discuss how weeks of evidence could be turned into a legal strategy, how surveillance could be a tool for pressure, how their own words could destroy them. I had documented their plan with the same methodical patience they had used on mine. Only I had done it better. With more detail, with more strategy. It was time to move to the next phase. It was time to show them what happened when they underestimated a man who built an empire from scratch, who understood that true power lay in preparation, documentation, and knowing exactly when to strike. I texted Harrison, I have new compelling evidence. Need an urgent meeting. He responded in minutes. Friday at 10, 0 inches the morning. Bring everything. I hung up the phone. Through the study window, the moonlight painted the lawn silver. In the house around me, they slept soundly, believing they were the architects of my ruin. They had no idea they were building their own. The morning light streamed through the study windows. March 19th at 8, I picked up the phone and dialed Harrison Cole's direct number. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Sterling, your message said you had evidence. Weeks of it. Surveillance recordings, conversations, attempts at manipulation, all documented. I need to meet today. This afternoon at 2, bring everything. I spent the morning organizing it. I created a folder on my laptop called Legal Evidence Package. Surveillance files copied, organized by date and severity. Printed transcripts of their most damning conversations. Julian talking about competency challenges. Elena worried about my suspicious silence. Both celebrating their supposed progress toward controlling my assets. Veronica's weekly reports went into a manila envelope, underlined and tabbed. I loaded everything onto 2 USB drives, one for Harrison and one backup. At 2, I sat across from Harrison in his conference room. The USB drive and documents between us, like exhibits in a trial. He watched 3 hours of recording, read all the transcripts, and studied Veronica's behavioral analysis. Finally, he leaned back, fingers interlaced. This is extensive. Multiple legal options, restraining orders, civil lawsuit, criminal charges for attempted poisoning. He tapped the trust document I had mentioned. But first, we protect your assets. Irrevocable living trust. How does that work? Assets are transferred to the trust. It becomes an independent legal entity. An independent trustee administers it. You set the conditions for beneficiary access. Once signed, they are untouchable. Not even you can modify them. He pulled out a notepad and began sketching the structure. We'll make it bulletproof. They won't be able to access it through lawsuits, manipulate the administrators, or effectively challenge it. How long would it take? A week. If we act now, you'll transfer the majority of your assets. Keep enough liquidity for personal use. We'll establish strict conditions for Elena's eventual access. What conditions? Harrison smiled. A sharp professional grin. Whatever you want. Age requirements. Financial independence. Absence of pending lawsuits. In short, any measure that ensures she cannot access the money through coercion or fraud. Over the next 5 days, we built an impenetrable fortress around my wealth. March 20th. Trust structure designed. $25 million transferred to the trust. $5 million kept liquid for my use. Elena could access it at age 45, 9 years from now, if she demonstrated 5 years of financial independence and had no civil or criminal cases against her for financial reasons. On March 23rd, a meeting with Florida Fiduciary Services, 2 fiduciary officers, professional and impartial, explained their role. They would follow this document to the letter. No family pressure. No manipulation. No exceptions. March 24th. Final signing. Harrison's conference room again. But this time with a notary and fiduciary officers present. The documents lay across the table like a treaty ending a war. I signed each page. Initialed and dated. The notary officially sealed each signature. Your assets are protected, Harrison said as I put the copies in a leather folder. She cannot manipulate, coerce, or sue you for them. The trust is irrevocable. Case closed. I drove home with a feeling I hadn't felt since February. Power. Control. Security. At home, life continued its strange theatre. They still knew nothing of the trust. The surveillance cameras recorded their casual conversations about the inheritance. Their certainty that eventually my money would be theirs. March 28th. Breakfast. Buttered toast. Elena mentioned when we inherit, as if it were inevitable. That night, Julian's laptop search history, how to challenge a will in Florida. I decided to tell them on April 1st, an auspicious date for plans to unravel. On March 31st, I texted both of them. Family meeting tomorrow. 10:00 inches the morning. In the living room. Important. Harrison had advised doing it in public or with witnesses. They could become aggressive. My house, I replied. My rules. The cameras would record everything. April 1st arrived. A clear, bright day. I set up my laptop connected to the television with the surveillance footage ready. At 10, they entered the living room. A palpable, nervous energy in the air. I stood. They sat. The sofa was lower than I was, establishing a hierarchy. I have made decisions about my estate. I filed the trust document. I have created an irrevocable living trust. Their attention sharpened. I explained systematically. $25 million transferred. Independent trustee. Conditions of access. Minimum age 45. Financial independence. No pending lawsuits. I watched their faces register comprehension. What? Elena's voice cracked. Are you cutting me out? I am protecting my assets from manipulation. Julian leaped up from the sofa. All this over the restaurant. A mistake. And you? A mistake. I picked up the remote and hit play. Their voices filled the room. Surveillance footage. Them talking about my competency issues. Planning to document my decline. Celebrating their progress toward the inheritance. You spied on us, Elena cried now. Your own daughter. I protected myself from those who tried to drug me into signing legal documents. We're going to sue. Julian stepped forward, poorly disguising his aggression. We're going to challenge this. You can't. It's irrevocable. It's done. Legally bulletproof. I looked him in the eyes without blinking. Try to challenge it. Don't waste your money on lawyers. We've lived here for 5 years. We have rights. You have no rights to my money. You never did. Julian stormed out. Elena followed, sobbing. I went back to my study, reviewed the camera recording of the confrontation I had just captured, saved it with the date and time, and a label, evidence of reaction. The rage confirmed their guilt. The following week, the house became a battlefield. Doors slamming. Hostile silence. Calls to lawyers were overheard, all saying the same thing. The trust was solid, unshakable. On April 7th, Elena attempted reconciliation. She knocked on my study door, tears welling up. Dad, we can fix this. I'm your daughter. My daughter would never have tried to poison me. It was a mistake. Please leave my study. She left. I sat alone, staring at the wall, knowing what came next. The trust protected my money. Now, I needed to reclaim my house. I opened my notebook and wrote 4 words: get them out of the house. That same night, I called a real estate agent, Linda Moretti, recommended by my banker for her discretion and speed. I want to sell my house. When can we list it? I can see it tomorrow morning. If it's as you describe, we could list it this weekend. April 8th. She arrived with a tape measure and a professional appraisal. I walked through the rooms where my daughter and son-in-law still lived, evaluating the market value of the house they were borrowing. A lovely property. I can list it for $7 million. This market moves fast, but the property must be vacant for showings. It will be. The listing went live on April 10th. First showings scheduled for April 12th. I notified Elena and Julian via text message. Showings Friday. You'll need to be out for 3 hours. You're selling the house? Julian replied by text. Yes. There was no response. They left on Friday morning. And when they returned, they found business cards from potential buyers on the kitchen counter. Their faces registered the comprehension that I was completely dismantling their life. On April 15th, I asked Harrison to draft the eviction notice formal, legal, final, giving them 60 days to vacate. I handed it to them that night as they sat in the living room, their borrowed living room. Julian read it, his face darkening. He tore it in half. You can't evict us. This is our home. Read the notice. Challenge it all you want. No lease. No rent. No tenant rights. 60 days. June 15th. We'll fight this. Try it. They hired a lawyer on April 16th. I listened to their consultation call via surveillance cameras. The lawyer's assessment matched Harrison's. If there's no lease, he has grounds. You live there by permission, which he is now revoking. Harrison filed the eviction lawsuit on April 20th. The court date was set for May 3rd, 3 weeks away. Meanwhile, I rented an apartment downtown, month-to-month lease. Oceanfront. Quiet. A clean place. No grudges. I moved out on April 28th. The house became hostile territory. I stayed mostly at the apartment, returning only for necessities. On each visit, the surveillance cameras captured their desperation. Elena crying, Julian raging, both calling lawyers who had no solutions. May 10th arrived. Miami-Dade Courthouse. 3rd floor. Eviction trial. Harrison and I sat at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Elena, Julian, and their lawyer. Young and overmatched. Aware he had no case. Judge Vance took the bench. A man in his 52nd, serious looking, experienced in seeing people try to evade consequences. Their lawyer stood. Your Honor, my clients have lived in this property for 5 years. Under what agreement? Judge Vance interrupted. His family. The plaintiff is Ms. Sterling Fox's father. That is not a lease agreement. Do they pay rent? No. Do they have a written lease? No, Your Honor. Then they are guests without a contract. Mr. Sterling has given appropriate 60-day notice. He looked at Harrison. Yes. Your Honor. Served on April 15th. They have until June 15th to vacate. Judge Vance reviewed the documents. I see no legal impediment to this eviction. The plaintiff is the owner of the property. The defendants have no lease or rental agreement. Notice was proper. He looked at Elena and Julian. You have until June 15th. After that date, law enforcement can intervene. Motion granted. The gavel cracked. Final decision. In the hallway, Julian confronted me, his voice low and menacing. You'll regret this. You're destroying your own family. I am removing those who poisoned me. We'll make you pay. With what money? I walked away, leaving him sputtering in the hallway. The next 5 weeks were a tense standoff. I stayed at the apartment. They remained in the house, packing slowly, desperately searching for rental properties they couldn't afford without my help. The surveillance cameras recorded endless arguments. Elena breaking down, Julian's fury at their complete defeat. On June 14th, I received confirmation. The buyer of the house had completed the inspection and the sale was approved for closing in August. Pending possession handover. June 15th was moving day. I arrived at the house at noon. A large moving truck was in the driveway loading furniture. Elena, eyes red, face haggard, gave instructions to the movers. Julian loaded boxes, his jerky movements reflecting contained fury. They didn't even greet me. I stood on the lawn watching them load their possessions. Everything I had bought for them. Everything they had accumulated during 5 years of living off my generosity. The truck pulled away at 4. They drove off in Julian's car without looking back. I entered the empty house, the echo of footsteps ringing on the hardwood floor. No furniture, no trace of them. No trace of poison in the air. Room by room, I walked through the reclaimed space. Marks on the walls where pictures once hung. Indentations in the carpet where furniture had been. The house felt like an empty shell, contaminated by what had happened inside, but finally blissfully empty. My phone vibrated. Harrison. Eviction completed. Ready to talk civil lawsuit. I stood in the center of the living room. My living room. Looking around at the emptiness. Selling the house would erase their presence completely. But first, one more legal action. One final blow. I texted back. Yes. Let's schedule a meeting for Monday. It's time for this to be definitive. I wrote my reply to Harrison. Yes. Let's schedule the meeting for Monday. It was time for this to be permanently on the record. The empty living room surrounded me. No furniture. Just the hardwood floor and the echo. I sat down, my back against the wall, laptop resting on my knees, and opened the evidence folders one last time. Months of documentation, surveillance recordings ordered by date, hospital medical records, Mateo's statement, Veronica's reports, every conversation, every attempt at manipulation, every proof that what happened to me was not paranoia, but premeditated exploitation. I created a final chronological document, printed everything, and organized it into a tabbed, expanding folder. Each item told part of the story. Taken together, they were undeniable. On Monday morning, June 16th, I met Harrison in his office. He spread the evidence across the conference table as if it were an indictment. Civil lawsuit under Florida Statute 825.103, Harrison said. Taking notes. Elder exploitation. Financial manipulation. Attempted battery by drugging. Coercion. Aggravated emotional distress. Fraud. Conspiracy. Seeking $500,000 in damages plus costs. This isn't about money, I said. I know. It's about public record documenting what they did. He looked up from his notes. You want consequences? Exactly. We filed the complaint on June 17th. Elena and Julian received the court notification in their new apartment, a small two-bedroom unit in a neighborhood far removed from the luxury of Coral Gables. The process server reported they had barely unpacked. Their lawyer contacted Harrison a few days later, his voice tight on the speakerphone. "My clients can't afford this. They're already ruined. They should have considered that before attempting to drug and defraud their benefactor," Harrison replied coldly. Discovery began. Harrison requested their financial records. Bank statements revealed the truth. No savings. Living paycheck to paycheck on credit cards. Drowning in debt created by their life expectations. On June 28th, the settlement offer arrived. I met Harrison in his office to review it. $50,000 payment plan. Private admission of guilt. No trial. "It's reasonable," Harrison said cautiously. "They clearly can't pay the full judgment, but the settlement would be confidential. No public record." I slid the papers back across his desk. "No. I want this to be public. I want it on the court records forever. Trial is risky. The judge could award less compensation. I don't care about the money. I care about the record." I looked him in the eyes. "They tried to destroy me. I want official record that they were wrong and I was right." Harrison nodded slowly. "Then we go to trial." July became the month of preparation. Matteo confirmed he would testify. The hospital doctor provided an expert affidavit. Veronica prepared the surveillance evidence for court presentation. I gave a deposition. Hours of questions answered under oath, laying the factual foundation. July 25th. Preliminary hearing. The judge set the trial date for July 28th. That Monday morning dawned clear and hot. I dressed in my best suit and arrived early at the Miami-Dade County Courthouse. Judge Hastings presided. She was in her 52nds, known for her impartiality and strong rulings. Harrison had recommended a bench trial instead of a jury trial. "Judges understand elder law better than average citizens," he explained. Opening statements. Harrison presented the timeline and evidence summary with meticulous precision. Their lawyer, young and out of his depth, argued that a family misunderstanding had been exaggerated. Matteo testified first. He described the restaurant incident with full conviction. "I saw Mrs. So. Sterling Fox pour something from a small vial into Mr. Sterling's wine glass while he was away from the table. Clear. Liquid. Deliberate action." Their lawyer attempted cross-examination. "Could you have been mistaken?" "No. I know what I saw. I couldn't keep quiet." The hospital doctor explained the diazepam analysis results. Dosage. Dangers. Veronica presented the surveillance methodology, chain of custody, and authentication of the recordings. Day 2. July 29th. The surveillance video played on the courtroom screen. Their own voices filled the space, discussing competency issues, planning Elias's consultation, and celebrating their supposed progress toward the inheritance. Julian said, "He's 63, not lucid anymore." Elena's voice said, "We deserve this money." I watched Judge Hastings take notes, her expression serious and focused. Elena testified, crying, She admitted to the restaurant incident, but claimed she only wanted him to listen to her about important papers. Julian testified. Defensive and hostile. He blamed me for overreacting to a family conflict. Then it was my turn. The witness stand felt solemn, formal, everyone watching me. I stated my name, my age, and my relationship to the defendants. I answered Harrison's questions calmly and precisely. Restaurant surveillance, trust creation, eviction. I presented the evidence one by one. Cross-examination became aggressive. Aren't you being vengeful? Mr. Sterling, I'm seeking accountability. There's a difference. Judge Hastings asked her own question. Why pursue a civil suit after fiduciary protection and eviction? I looked straight at her. Because what they did was wrong. It needs to be on public record for my protection, as a precedent for the truth. July 30th. Closing arguments. Harrison, this is a textbook case of elder exploitation, attempted battery by drugging, financial manipulation, psychological coercion. The evidence is overwhelming. Their lawyer, family conflict and poor judgment. Yes, but not criminal exploitation. Judge Hastings closed her notebook. I will issue the ruling in writing in 2 weeks. I left the courthouse in the late afternoon heat with the satisfaction of having completed my task. I spoke the truth publicly, presented the evidence. Now justice would decide if the truth mattered. 2 weeks of waiting. 2 weeks wondering if the system would validate what I had suffered or dismiss it as family drama. I returned to my temporary apartment, watched the sunset over Biscayne Bay, and waited for the world to confirm what I already knew, that I had been right to protect myself, to defend myself, to demand justice. August 15th. The dawn light filtered over the ocean outside my balcony. Coffee steamed in my hand. Bitter. Familiar. Comforting. 2 weeks after the trial ended, the phone rang at 9. Mr. Sterling. Harrison. We have the verdict. I sat down. The infinite ocean stretching out before me. The judge ruled in your favor. Total victory. Clear and convincing evidence of elder exploitation. Attempted financial fraud. And intentional infliction of emotional distress was found. Judgment for $350,000 plus court costs. $75,000 in punitive damages. $425,000 total. The number seemed abstract. There's more, Harrison continued. Permanent restraining order. They are prohibited from contacting you directly or indirectly. No calls. No letters. No communications through third parties. Violation results in contempt charges. And the payment? They have nothing. Court-ordered payment plan. Garnishment of future wages until the debt is settled could take years. But the judgment is public record. Searchable permanent documentation of what they attempted. That's what I wanted. Not the money. Documentation. Validation. Public record that I wasn't paranoid or cruel. That I was the victim of an attack. And I had every right to defend myself. Thank you, Harrison, for everything. You did the work. I just legalized it. After hanging up, I sat watching the sunrise. The written opinion arrived by email an hour later. I read every page. Judge Hastings wrote, "The evidence presented demonstrates the premeditated exploitation of an elderly person by those in positions of trust. The incident at the restaurant, the attempt to drug someone to facilitate document signing, constitutes a felony in itself. Subsequent surveillance recordings reveal ongoing manipulation and planning. This court finds the defendant's actions reprehensible and deserving of the maximum civil sanctions." Reprehensible. Maximum penalty. Public document. I printed the opinion and filed it. One more document in a case now closed. On August 16th, I closed on the sale of the Coral Gables house, sold to a young family for $2.75 million. They will never know what happened within those walls. They will fill it with different memories, different lives, different futures. That same day, I bought a downtown apartment, 10th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, ocean views to the horizon. $850,000 cash purchase from the house sale. Modern, impeccable, no history. I moved in on August 18th. Furniture arrived and was simply placed. Nothing excessive. Nothing unnecessary. The space felt like taking a breath after being underwater. August 20th. Last meeting with Veronica in her Pinewood office. The certification still hung on the wall. "Case closed," she said, handing me a USB drive. All the surveillance recordings, reports, and documentation. Go on the record that I thank you for everything. You made it easy. They were predictable. She stood and extended her hand. "Take care. Mr. Sterling." We shook hands. The matter concluded. The professional relationship was over. On August 22nd, I sat on my new balcony, phone in hand. I searched for Elena's contact, my finger hovering over the screen. Delete contact. A confirmation box popped up. I pressed yes. Her name vanished. Julian's followed. Both disappeared from my phone, from my life, from my future. The restraining order legally barred them from communication. Even if they wanted to apologize, reconcile, or explain, the law prevented it. 3 years minimum. Enough time for life to move on without them. I felt nothing. Neither satisfaction nor sadness. Just a serene peace. On August 23rd and 24th, I established new routines. Coffee on the balcony in the morning. Walks by the sea in the afternoon. Reading at night with the sound of the ocean drifting through the open windows. I called old friends I had neglected during the chaos. Made lunch plans. Reconnected. And rebuilt my social life outside of surveillance and legal battles. On August 25th, the sunset painted the sky in layers. Orange blending into purple. Then deep blue. I stood on my balcony, coffee cooling in my hand, watching the day turn into night. 6 months since February. Since that restaurant. Since Matteo's warning. The glass switch. And everything that followed. I protected my assets through the trust. Evicted them from my house. Held them accountable with a civil judgment. And put their exploitation on public record. I won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival, like emerging from dark waters and realizing I was still breathing. My daughter had tried to poison me. That truth weighed on me, unchangeable. But I refused to be a victim. I refused to accept the manipulation. I refused to let trust make me vulnerable to destruction. The ocean stretched infinitely, the horizon line crisp and defined. Somewhere in the city behind me, Elena and Julian lived with the consequences. A court debt that would follow them for years. A public record that affected their job applications and background checks. A restraining order that prevented them from spinning their story or seeking reconciliation on their own terms. I didn't hate them. Hate required energy, attention, emotional dedication, all that I had dedicated to documentation, preparation, and legal battles. Now I only had peace. The sun touched the horizon. The colors deepened, and the city lights began to twinkle behind me. My coffee was cold, but I didn't move to refill it. I simply stood there, watching the cycle of nature continue, oblivious to human drama. I built an empire from nothing, sold it for $30 million, protected $25 million through an unshakable trust, lost a daughter, but saved myself. I found justice in the courts, and peace in separation. Some stories end with family reunions, forgiveness, and healing. This one ended with distance, documentation, and the relief of being safe. The sun disappeared behind the ocean, darkness settling around me. I finished my cold coffee, left the cup on the balcony railing, and watched the stars appear. Tomorrow I would call my former partner about that consulting opportunity. Next week, I would have lunch with friends. Eventually, I would date, travel, and fill my days with something other than litigation. But tonight I simply stood here, free, protected, alone, but not lonely. The ocean whispered against the shore below. The city hummed with its infinite rhythm. Life went on, indifferent to individual struggles, offering new days to those who survived old battles. I had survived, and that was enough. If you liked this story, please hit like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left. Thank you for watching.